Thanks for staying with us as we are now looking at various issues, and one of them is around March 8 being International Women's Day, and this is quite a significant day. But this year's theme is Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. It highlights the importance of gender equality, women's and girls' empowerment, as well as their rights to healthier lives. But of course, there's been concerns over time about their access and the need for women to also be given enough support to ensure that they do also have equal opportunities. Let's then speak now to UNAIDS Executive Director, Winnie, who joins us live now. Thank you so much for your time. If we are still hearing that girls, for example, aren't able to get to school or return to school after they fall pregnant because they still don't have a support system, they have to raise their babies, the challenges that also come with being young mothers, what does this tell us then about the road that we've traveled as a world when it comes to investing in women to ensure that they have equal opportunities?
Thank you for your question and for having me on your program. Women and girls across the last century have made a lot of progress. We've been closing the gaps on women and girls' rights in the last 50, 100 years. For example, we have more girls. Girls are catching up with boys in primary school and even in secondary school. We also have more women in decision making. You see more women in parliaments. So there is progress, but this progress is so uneven and very fragile. Today, you mentioned girls. 70,000 girls die from pregnancy and childbirth complications every year. 1.2 billion women and girls live in countries where there are restrictions to abortion, pushing them to have backstreet abortions and risking their lives. Violence, poverty, discrimination, climate change, all these are pushing, and recently COVID, pandemics, are pushing back on the gains that we have been making. This is so true here in Southern Africa. In South Africa, in Mozambique, we see the impacts of climate change that these countries didn't contribute much to. But floods, hurricanes are washing away clinics that we set up for people living with HIV, clinics that should be treating people for other diseases. We see an increase in malaria. The girls who were in school during COVID, before COVID, millions didn't return. There's a study that showed that in Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, and Tanzania, 56% of these girls became pregnant. The girls in hard-to-reach areas, I'm not meaning the girls who are well protected in the cities and in middle-class homes, but hard-to-reach poor girls, percentage of 56 fell pregnant. So our gains are being washed away, and are being pushed back.
And just how far back would you say that these gains are being pushed away, and how much work now needs to be done to try and reverse some of them?
It varies from country to country. Some countries which are in crisis, for example, which have fallen into war, like on this continent, a country like Sudan, a country like Chad, a country like Central African Republic, where you see conflict, you're going to see more reversals of gains. But also where you see the biggest climate impacts, like Mozambique. Mozambique was the worst hit country by climate last year in the whole world. These are real challenges. And then now you have wars in other parts of the world that have resulted in a high cost of living, and that poor people are sinking further and further in poverty, unable to meet basic needs for their girls and their boys, and the gaps between girls and boys widen. So you're seeing a country like your own stepping up so hard, South Africa, to manage in a situation of fiscal constraint, to keep children in school, to keep hospitals equipped. But yet the situation, the global economic environment does not permit them to have the resources to spend as they should. But something you have to be proud of, that this scourge of gender-based violence, that is a global phenomenon, that is hurting girls and women all over the world, that in your country, women have stood up and leaders are rising to fight it. I was there recently. I found your president speaking to the House of Traditional Leaders and challenging them to sign on a petition to have zero tolerance to sexual and gender-based violence. Those are the actions we need. We need the responsibility of men to take the lead to close the gaps for women and girls. And violence, sexual and gender-based violence, is a critical area.
And we have this conversation, amidst, some growing developments around the world, and French lawmakers making abortion a constitutional right. I wonder what is your reaction to that?
1.2 billion girls and women around the world are living in countries where there's some form of restriction to abortion. And we know what that means. What that means is that poor women, poor girls go to have these abortions in the back streets, and it costs their lives. We don't need this. We need to have in every country the right of a woman to choose to make decisions about her own body, including a decision on abortion. This is verified by the data and the evidence. But above all, we need to have leaders, people in leadership who reflect the society we are in. We need to have men and women from poor backgrounds and also from rich backgrounds, I suppose, all in leadership, so that the interests of those who are crushed by patriarchy, poverty, climate change, violence are also heard and taken care of in decision making. Where you see all these laws that are controlling women's bodies, all these laws that are protecting the rich from paying their taxes, it's because democracies are captured. They are controlled by very rich men. Democracies are not reflecting the interest of the very ordinary poor girl or poor boy. So we need the voices of women in decision-making to solve this problem of our bodies. Women's bodies are for women to decide upon, not governments of men to regulate.
All right. Thank you so much as you leave us there with a lot to ponder on. Thank you. We do appreciate those insights as, of course, we look ahead to March 8 being International Women's Day. That's UNAIDS Executive Director, Winnie Byanyima.